Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back on the dev server and it's time to have a look at a new German destroyer that's coming into the game. This is a rank 3 battle racing 4.7 destroyer and it is the Z-46. Now this vehicle is incredibly similar to another destroyer that they added more recently to the German tech tree, the Z-47. They both have basically the same general armaments. They're both part of the same class, the Type 1936C, and also are, of course, project machines, meaning that they were never actually finished in their entirety. Now, Gaijin has been bolstering this area for a while for good old Germany. Obviously, the Z-32 with the 150s, but also the Elbing, the World War I light cruiser, which, I've got to be honest, is not exactly my favorite machine to play. And then, of course, the Z-46, the Z-47 on top of the Z-25, which was the event vehicle from a while ago in the Battle Pass. So what does the Z-46 offer? The main thing this gets access to is 3 dual mounts of 128mm cannons. One set on the front and 2 on the back. These guns are much more similar to the 5-inch guns that you have from the Americans or the 4.5-inch guns from the British, meaning that they actually have a hell of a fire rate on them. So you can see here the first stage fire rate of these 128s is actually 20 rounds per minute, which means you are firing a shot every 3 seconds on each of the guns. Even after the first stage is over, it has access to 18 rounds per minute, which let's just say is still quite a lot. It only has 20 rounds ready-use ammo though in each of the turrets, so you'll be going to that 18 rounds per minute pretty quickly once you're engaged in some battles. Also at the same time, the ammo racks themselves are not exactly huge for these vehicles, so it's going to be quite hard to pop the 128mm. You can see that they're quite small even on the back where they've got the 2 turrets. It's nowhere near the size as many others that we've seen in the game. It also gets access to some secondary weapons, 2 dual-mounted 37mm guns, which you can find kind of in the center here. On top of that, you have 3 sets of quad 20mm as well, which are here. These are the flak Vierling 38s, and I haven't really found too much use for these. Obviously they're more designed for AA, but I feel like vehicles get so close to you before these things open up that they're not too useful. The 37s and 40s and things like that seem a lot more useful. Also at the same time, maybe my crews are just not good enough. There are 2 20mm guns on top of this as well, just as additional AA, which are right here on the machine, the C-38s on both sides, so those guys can have a little bit of fun on top of it too. But these mounts, I wish I could zoom in, but unfortunately my Ansel is broken again on the dev server, but you can see here the mounts of these 20mm, they're super well defined and also just look really nice quality wise. This whole ship just looks beautiful as a machine. So what else does it have? It has some G7A torpedoes, which is pretty standard for a blue water machine for Germany. The G7A torpedoes are the ones that you see pretty much everywhere, and have pretty decent travel distance, but are also super slow in the water, which does make them quite easy to dodge, especially with the torpedo change mechanics a while ago. Then it also gets access to mines, so you can bring mines if you want. Usually for me, I only bring mines on very specific vehicles, just because they can just be exposed ammo racks at the end of the day. But it is at least possible if you want to throw it in. Has the improved rangefinder for the 128, and this rangefinder is pretty good, pretty standard one, nothing too fancy about it, but just kind of nice to see. And of course the engine power in the middle, meaning that this thing can go about 70 kilometers an hour. Has quite a lot of crew for a destroyer as well, 320. If we compare this to some of the kind of crazy machines for America, you can see the Somers only has 235, the Porter 194, and the gearing is much closer with 336. So the Z-46 has quite a lot of crew for a destroyer, giving it extra survivability because of how it works in the game. Then you have, of course, the camos, the unicolor one, which is nice, the bicolor spotted, and of course the tricolor spotted with the kind of weird green. I definitely prefer the bicolor one, so you don't have to see that odd green which is around the place. So the 128s are nice, but they of course have a drawback, and this is quite a large one and affects a lot of these German destroyers and makes them not annoying to play, because you still do a ton of damage, but it can be infuriating if you get up-tiered into specific vehicles. Even though the 128s, they have good, TN2 equivalent, 2 kilos on a round, which is fired every 3 seconds, pretty decent. They also have, the good old HETF, if you want to use that, with a bit higher TNT equivalent. Overall, they can be, really useful, but there's no AP. So you're just stuck once again with the 150mm problem for the Germans as well. You can hit like a truck and you can do it pretty often, but if anything's got any type of armor at all, then you are just screwed. So against other destroyers, or at least most of the other destroyers, the Z-46 is pretty good. Against anything that's heavier than that, whether it be something like a light cruiser, you are going to be able to output damage to it, but at the same time you're not going to be able to output more damage than it's coming at you, which is a problem. Then you've got the 37s, you can have some pretty nice rounds on those, which is quite nice. But yeah, that's the major issue with a lot of these naval machines for Germany. The Z-32, once again, 150mm guns, they finally gave it an SAP-BC, but at the same time, you lose a lot of kilogram, equivalent to be able to hit what's going on. Then, for stuff like the Z-43, which has the 128s, you also have this HE with the base fuse, which does lose a bit of HE, but also does a bit more pen. With this new vehicle right now, just like the Z-47, you only get access to this HE shell, which once again hits well, but just won't do enough damage against some of the heavier targets, and that's going to cripple it going forward once you face those kind of big cojones. So that's, at least in my opinion, a bit of an issue for a machine like this. But everything else should be completely fine. The AA cover won't be the best, but it'll be, good enough. And the fire rate will mean that you will be able to contest with a lot of American and British destroyers, which have the most damage output for this BR. If you have a look at stuff like the Diana, for example, the Diana can output a ton of damage super quickly, which is really nice, and they also added the other parts of the class to the game, so you can enjoy it once again with the new British ship. But this one, just to give you an idea, you can see how much damage you can put out with these guns over and over and over again. And against destroyers, you'll do decent damage, which will be really nice, but also against like larger machines, you will really struggle in the regard. So against stuff like destroyers, this thing will be fine, and at 4.7 a lot of the time it will face destroyers, but those moments where you run into the bigger boys like the Trentons or the Rallies or anything like that which is of similar BR, you are going to struggle, and that is the crux of these kind of late destroyers, unless you have AP and you're able to pen certain ammo racks, which makes it a little bit easier. Overall, nice to see them flesh out this area. Hopefully this thing can get AP, and if not, it'll still be nice, just not against all of its competition. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Cupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R. and Lafouche for supporting the channel.